Good afternoon. For the 9 years of the Bucharest Forum, we benefited from direct engagement and support of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania. This cooperation allowed us to reach to important speakers, explore new topics, and enrich the agenda. The personal support of Minister Aurescu honors us, and we are grateful for the time and effort that he has put into the forum each year. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce Bogdan Aurescu, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania.
Well, thank you very much for your introduction, distinguished audience. Allow me first to thank the Aspen Institute and the GMF for the invitation to close the 9th edition of the Bucharest Forum, which once again proved to be a success. You approached key topics dominating our current agenda, and your debates are very relevant to understand today's world and anticipate the shape of our future. And these two actions, understanding and anticipating, are now more needed than ever before, I would say. I'm honored to be able to share with you some thoughts on Romania's foreign policy priorities, with a special focus on the state of multilateralism today, and on the way ahead of us to make it more effective and to the direct benefit for our citizens. And this is precisely one of the topics prevailing in foreign ministers' minds these days when faced with some of the hard lessons of the pandemic. As many have already pointed out, we are living in a fast-moving, much more complex and challenging international environment. The pandemic crisis and its still ongoing effects have revealed our vulnerabilities at national and international level. They have accelerated several pre-existing and emerging trends on the global stage. Just to name a few, we are facing a strong return of the geopolitics, increasing attempts to challenge the international order and the international law, the continued rise of hybrid threats, a disturbing expansion of infodemics, the persistence of widespread tensions and conflicts. At the same time, a fourth industrial revolution with yet unknown social and economic consequences is well underway, while global issues such as climate change remain as pressing as ever. Although the future is harder to anticipate than before, 2020 has already provided some lessons we can use to shape what is currently an unpredictable tomorrow and identify and grasp emerging opportunities. One of the most important lessons learned concerns the tight interdependence between the national and the international spheres, between domestic and foreign policy making. When faced with a crisis of such scale, it becomes clear that no country can pull through on its own. After an initial retreat to isolation, or let's say a natural instinct to turn inwards and protect by yourself your own borders and population, the world turned to multilateral institutions for coordination and help, only to rediscover during the early stages of the crisis that some of them were partly unable to answer to our urgent needs. In this context, it is clear that unilateral action is neither sustainable nor effective in times of crisis. Multilateral action and cooperation, even if at times flawed and imperfect, are preferable to a political-driven self-isolation. Adaptation in this scenario means acting towards increasing the efficiency of international cooperation for rapid crisis responses based on international law and by employing inclusive instruments. It means finding the right way to interconnect and balance the need to ensure the security of citizens inside and outside physical borders on one hand, and the need to ensure a functional global order on the other hand. Now security must be acknowledged at large by also considering its healthcare and human dimension and the supporting institutional architecture. We also need to focus on increasing our resilience at national and international level in all its dimensions. Political, by staying true to and protecting our democratic values and the rule of law. Economic, by strengthening our supply chains and protecting open trade. Digital, medical, and others. Thus, the crisis reminded us of the importance of effective and pragmatic institutional international cooperation and multilateralism, while at the same time exposing the limits and vulnerabilities of the multilateral system. The second lesson learned stems directly from the previous. In order to deal with this crisis and successfully recover, we need a functional global order and a strong, efficient, rules-based multilateral system that is based on the international rule of law. Let me emphasize at this point that we do not need to start from the scratch. We have a rules-based international order, We should not exacerbate its shortcomings, nor overlook its existence in our daily actions. We need to reaffirm and strengthen this order, including by preventing actors from further trying to weaken it. We also need to update it where it does not reflect current realities. And third, we need to fill in the gaps in areas which are not yet the subject of international law and regimes, like artificial intelligence, new information technologies, to name just a few. We also have most of the multilateral institutions and legal instruments that we need. What is needed is their reform or upgrading, as the case may be, to make them more fit to purpose following a functional auditing, not only a political one. I'm not speaking about reform for reform's sake. This is not an abstract exercise. A reinforced rules-based international order and a stronger, more efficient multilateral system are essential to our stability, security, and prosperity, and also for our democracies. They will play a crucial part in our efforts to build back better and greener, for example. Such efforts should be pursued while ensuring that we all follow the same rules and we all press for every international actor to follow them. Multilateralism and international law could be seen as a global common good. It means that states should act together and encourage others to act together in order to avoid the prisoner's dilemma. It also signifies that all members of the international system should act in accordance with the norms and principles of international law, and first and foremost in accordance with the UN Charter and the values and principles which it embodies. Multilateralism is inbuilt in the international legal order, and conversely, international law is integral to the current multilateral governance system. International law is at the same time an effective tool which can be used to foster global cooperation between states in order to mitigate effects of common issues such as climate change and the multiple processes which it encompasses. I wish to highlight in this respect the role played by the International Law Commission of the United Nations, a body which I have the honor to be a member, in the progressive development and codification of international law. As a member of this body, I am part of a study group tasked with studying sea level rise, one of the most salient effects of climate change in relation to international law. Such work is a prime example of how international law could play a role as stabilizer of international relations and the grounds which strong and meaningful reform ideas should be based upon. At its 75th anniversary this year, the United Nations should remain at the center of this revitalized, reformed multilateral system. The values and principles upheld by the UN are perennial, and their protection at national and international level should be our core mission. While stepping up efforts aimed at UN reform, we must also keep the momentum in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Actions in this respect are more urgent than ever, considering that the current crisis is prone to deepen economic and social inequalities and to widen the gender gap. This year, Romania celebrates 65 years of fully fledged UN membership, and this is an opportunity to reaffirm our firm support to the organization and to multilateralism. Romania will continue to abide by the values and principles of the Charter and cooperate with all the member states with the goal of achieving the future we want for the present and coming generations. But the UN is not the only organization that must be strengthened and reformed. The past few decades have shown us that open trade creates growth and prosperity. The World Trade Organization remains the cornerstone of the global trading framework, but the last major update of the global trade rules took place more than 25 years ago. So it is obvious that some of the WTO rules might have become obsolete, even more so as a result of the lessons learned of the pandemic. The WTO reform must be conducted in order to improve its main functions and to adjust it to a changing world. It is time all WTO members engage constructively and renew their commitments to an updated balance of rights and obligations. I am confident that with the right leadership and the proper reforms, the WTO can and will become effective. The short list of candidates for the helm of the organization, 2 experienced women, are an indication that things are moving in the right direction. The OECD is another organization that plays a crucial role in shaping international economic politics. Romania is deeply involved in the activity of its various groups and committees as part of our strong commitment to the OECD accession objective. Through the Development Assistance Committee, for example, we work on improving our emerging donor profile. And we are hopeful that the current background can also act as a political impetus that could lead to a breakthrough on the substance and sequence of enlargement. Another important message is that we all need a stronger, more efficient, and more credible World Health Organization in order to manage the current pandemic, to prepare for the future ones, and to complement national efforts to build more resilient and effective health systems. The adoption by the 73rd World Health Assembly of the resolution on COVID-19 response, which was proposed by the European Union, demonstrating the willingness of the WHO member states to tackle the organization's reform by initiating a process of impartial, independent, and comprehensive evaluation. We have also agreed to draw the lessons learned from the WHO coordinated international health response to COVID-19. Regional and thematic multilateral formats are also part of the complex multilateral architecture defining Romania's foreign policy. This June, Romania has committed to extending by 6 months its chairmanship in office of the Organization of Black Sea Economic Cooperation in order to ensure continuity. It was a way to reconfirm the importance we give to regional cooperation in the Black Sea, an endeavor that the Black Sea Trust led by Alina Inaich has as its core mission. From 2019 to 2021, Romania also holds the presidency of the Community of Democracies. Our presidency's program focuses on youth engagement, the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, and on the relation between artificial intelligence or technology and democracy. On the 20th anniversary conference of the Community of Democracies, which I hosted in Bucharest on June 26 this year, the Governing Council adopted a new statement known as the Bucharest Declaration. It marks 20 years after the Warsaw Declaration, supplementing and updating the founding principles of the community, and thus proving they remain as relevant as ever. It also reinforces the common engagement of promoting and defending the democratic principles, especially during the current pandemic, that put at risk democracy in many countries around the world. Moreover, we have joined and are actively involved in flexible networks aimed at revitalizing the rules-based multilateral cooperation, such as the Alliance for Multilateralism, which we have joined recently. In upholding the value of multilateralism and concretely acting in its favor, Romania is not unique. We are also part of the European Union's accelerating efforts to play a leading role in reinvigorating the multilateral system while constantly making its case. The EU's own democratic credential, its multilateral nature, its proven support for democracy and human rights, the resources dedicated to democracy and human rights, and to humanitarian assistance, the contribution to peacekeeping and conflict mediation efforts, its track record as a norm setter in areas such as climate change or protection of privacy, all these make the EU able and worthy of more multilateral leadership. So far, the EU has been punching below its weight on the global stage, and we are all aware of that. Several lines of action are already clear at the EU level, and we have discussed this, for instance, when the High Representative joined us during the annual meeting of the Romanian ambassadors in September. One line of action involves reducing our dependence on global actors who do not act in accordance with our value systems and who may eventually try to divert us from following our foreign policy commitments. Another line of action focuses on consolidating and diversifying our partnerships and alliances with like-minded countries and actors, those that share our values and goals when it comes to multilateralism and strengthening resilience. It is only logical in this context that consolidating the transatlantic relationship is and should remain our priority. Despite having different views on certain issues, the EU and the United States belong to the same community of values and security. What ties us together is much more relevant and profound than any temporary divides. There is no choice to be made here, as there is only one way to strengthen our national and international resilience, and this means strengthening the transatlantic link. This is also the framework in which, in my opinion, the concept of EU strategic autonomy must be analyzed, as it mainly refers to national and EU level resilience and the way in which these two levels share competencies in crisis scenarios. Thus, we must acknowledge that on one hand, we can build up our strategic autonomy precisely by also strengthening cooperation with like-minded partners. Additionally, we must understand that the better prepared the member states are for managing a crisis at individual level without sacrificing solidarity, the better the EU response and assistance will be. So in turn, and as a direct consequence, the EU can help member states enhance their preparedness, as proven by the financial package and the economic relaunch plan, which includes significant funding for a project like the Union of Health in the near future. Thus, understanding EU strategic autonomy is tied not only to solidarity, but goes much further into the way in which we understand and act upon the principle of subsidiarity. To sum up, although the global context is the most challenging in recent memory, the good news is that the challenges are not entirely new. The bad news is that we are dealing with a different level of complexity and a different pace of its unraveling. There is only one way for us ahead. We must work harder to capitalize those trends that benefit us and to curb those that harm us. One of the opportunities of this crisis is to imprint a sense of urgency on the existing efforts to reaffirm, restore, and reform the rules-based multilateral system. Thank you so much.